I believe we are but children picking up pebbles from the shores of the boundless ocean. This statement was given by the chief engineer involved in the building of the Panama Canal. Recently, Mr. Donald Trump, the US president elect, has made his ambitions very clear. He wants to take back control of what was once America's, that is the Panama Canal. Now, obviously, this has ruffled quite a few feathers, not only among the Panamanian government, but also China. So, in this lecture, we are going to discuss a lot of interesting things. This is going to be a cauldron of various aspects that we discuss. We'll discuss in brief about history, geography, economy, polity, and the culmination of all these aspects, that is the geopolitics. So this is an illustration of the Panama Canal cargo ships, and this is an illustration of the workers during working during that time. This is one of the famous presidents, Mr. Teddy Roosevelt or Theodore Roosevelt, who was one of the chief pioneers in supervising or building the Panama Canal. And this is, of course, at the end, when we conclude all the factors, when we summarize, we'll conduct about the geopolitical tensions and we'll make extensive use of the map to make things exceptionally clear. Okay. So let us locate the country of Panama first. So Panama is a Latin American country. I will not go into the Latin definition of Latin America. Basically, simplifying the Latin American countries, the countries where the majority of the people speak the Romance languages or the languages derived from Latin. For example, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. So majority of these countries like Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, they speak Spanish. And this French Guyana, this is a French Guyana. So this is an overseas territory of France. They are the majority people, French. Brazil, the majority of the people speak Portuguese. So these are, except this Guyana, Suriname, and countries above Mexico. So this entire almost entire South America, most of the Caribbean countries, and this Central American countries, they form part of the Latin America. So this is Panama. Okay, and we are talking about, if I enlarge this, so we are talking about this place. Is the this is Panama City, the capital of Panama, and this is the Panama Canal running through it. Okay, so we are going to talk about that. So let us begin our discussion. So this, obviously, just like we have time and again come across the Suez Canal, which was opened in 1869. So similarly, initially what happened was, there was not only did the traders or the merchants, in order to ship their cargo from one coast to another, they had to take either this long sea route, which was around 22,500 kilometers long. This is New York, this is San Francisco in California. But also in 1850s, in 1850s, US experienced what was known as the California Gold Rush. So there were transportation measures, there were wagons which which could be used by the travelers or the merchants to get the gold, to discover gold, but it was very difficult to load and unload, to carry the gold as cargo to the other coast. There were the only other feasible option was the construction of the railroad through this narrow passage, but again, loading and unloading of cargo was difficult. So the engineers, the diplomats, they came up with another solution. Why not cut through this strip of land, connect the water bodies together, which will make the logistics and shipping easier and more cost effective. Fine. Now, being a student of geography, some definitions. So we are talking about the Panama Canal. There is one more similar term known as isthmus, and you might have also heard about this term strait. Okay, I'll give you examples via the map as well. So, canal. What is a canal? It is a narrow body of water. It is a narrow body of water joining two larger water bodies. Okay, like Panama Canal joins the Caribbean Sea, or we can say largely the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. Okay, and isthmus is a narrow strip of land which connects two larger land masses. Okay, now if we come back to this, so you can see this is an isthmus, narrow strip of land which connects two larger bodies, the land masses, that is the North America and the South America, and the Panama Canal goes through here, which is a water body, narrow water body connecting two larger water bodies, that is, this is the Atlantic Ocean and this is the Pacific Ocean. If I So it is like this. Okay, so this is the Caribbean Sea, it joining the Atlantic Ocean, and this is the Pacific Ocean. Other examples we have of the Suez Canal. Here we have the Suez Canal. Okay, then if we talk about the isthmus, this is a very famous isthmus, the Isthmus of Pra, present in Thailand. Okay, now you might have also heard about strait, like the Park Strait between India and Sri Lanka. Okay, so what is the difference between strait and canal? Both are narrow water bodies connecting two larger bodies of water, but canals are artificial or man-made, straits are natural. That is the main difference. For example, if you see here, this is the Strait of Hormuz connecting two larger water bodies, the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. But this is natural. This is not artificially constructed. Similarly, here the Park Strait is natural. Similarly, we have the very famous Strait of Malacca between Malaysia and Indonesia. Okay, so this is an example of isthmus. So I hope you get this is Suez Canal, because initially, just like the Isthmus of Panama, this was Suez Gulf. This was a land part continuously joined. There was a canal made through this land portion to connect the two larger water bodies. That is why it is known as a canal and not a strait. Fine. So this basic difference should be clear to you. Okay. Okay. So now a little bit of background, the history. Before discussing the history, we have to discuss the significance. So Panama Canal, 14,000 transits. It conducts 14,000 transits per year annually. It accounts for 6% of the world trade by value. And we have already mentioned that the huge reduction in logistics cost, the transportation cost, huge saving of time. It takes approximately 12 hours for one journey to the Panama Canal to take place. Fine. So this is the significance of Panama Canal. Very important, like the Suez Canal. Okay. So now the interesting part, history. So like I said, that the Panama Canal was thought over as a mechanism to reduce the logistics cost. So there was this person in the late 19th century, Ferdinand de Lesseps. He was a French diplomat who is also credited with overseeing or supervising the construction of the Suez Canal. So after the success of the formation of the Suez Canal, he became very confident and he took over the task of overseeing the construction of the Panama Canal in 1881. Okay, now the problem with the topography, again we go to the map. The problem with the topography of Panama, why we need to understand it, it is very important because there is an elevated divide, there is a continental divide mountain range going through this. So it was very difficult, it was near impossible to cut through the land directly to connect the two water bodies or connect the two oceans. Fine. So if I demonstrate to you in simple terms, so the land was like this. So this is the continental divide. This we can treat as the Atlantic Ocean. This is the Pacific Ocean. So this is the water body. Okay, erstwhile, previous. So obviously, if a ship is traveling over here, obviously it cannot just climb over the top and go. So this Lesseps guy, the French diplomat, he said, okay, let's just excavate this rock, drill this rock, and bring it down so that the rock will come below the sea level and the ships can travel easily. But he underestimated the geography, topography, and climate. So, not only now, again, we come to the map, not only was the elevation unsuitable, not unsuitable for excavation or drilling or boring, the workers who were employed there, they had to survive in a tropical climate. See, the equator passes through here. So this is a highly tropical country, lot of forests, jungle fauna, jungle flora, rainfall, and with tropical climate comes lot of tropical diseases. And high rainfall, landslides took place, diseases afflicted the workers. Around thousands of around 22,000 of workers, they lost their lives in various accidents, landslides, and two diseases. Okay, so he failed there. Now, so when the French were about to depart, now comes US. So initially, if you see this, Nicaragua, another Latin American country, USA also was considering reducing the logistics cost of logistics. So initially US plan was to cut a canal through this country, Nicaragua. But since the French failed to build canal through Panama, so US said why not capitalize on the French debacle and make a name for ourselves. So then the US came into picture. So learning from their predecessors, mistakes of the predecessors, what at that time in 190 from 1901 to 1909, the president we have already discussed was Roosevelt, not Franklin D. Roosevelt, Theodore D. Roosevelt. Okay, so what he decided to do, first of all, at that time, this is the flag of Colombia. Again, we go to the map. This is Colombia adjoining Panama. It is South American, also Latin American country. So Colombia, it had control over Panama. Panama was not an independent nation till that time. Okay. So there was cries of Panamanian nationalism also. They wanted a voice for themselves. They wanted to become an independent country. So they combined forces with the US. US took the further augmented their chances of building the Panama Canal and establishing their control and supremacy. Their US military, they enabled the Panamanians to effect a coup, that is in 1903 coup, and overthrew the government and obtained independence from Colombia. Okay, so Panama now, in order to not only fulfill their dreams and to establish diplomatic relations, US started building the Panama Canal. Now, the interesting things, since we have already discussed the geography, including topography, elevation, climatic condition, all these aspects. So, obviously, Mr. Roosevelt did not want to repeat the mistakes of his French predecessors. So, what he did, this is very interesting. He built a navigation system of locks and lifts. So what he did, we'll try to understand here. Okay, so I'll just enlarge this diagram here. So So you can see this is the region which is enlarged here. This is Panama. So this we have already Cristobal, and we had seen in the map Colon, also one country, and this Balboa and Panama City is the capital. Okay. So initially, so if I show you in the map also, so you can see this. This is the same structure. So initially, this is a very important lake, Gatun Lake. Okay. So the plan was that instead of drilling, to minimize the drilling and boring of land, what can be done if this is we can. So the plan of the US authorities was to build a system of locks, a staircase like structure, and in which, if we assume this again as the Atlantic Ocean, and this as the Pacific Ocean, so the ship is here and we have a system of locks. Okay. So what was the purpose of this locks? And the water is stored here in these locks with the help of a reservoir that came to be known as the Gatun Lake. It is an artificially created lake. So what now happens is that when the ship is moving, it comes across this lock. So what happens? Here the water, it recedes. The water here is made to recede. The water here is made to rise. With the rise in water, the ship, the ship traversing, which wants to traverse through this channel, it also rises. The sea level becomes same. Then the lock is opened. This it travels through here. Okay. Then again, this sea level decreases. It comes to the level of this. Then again, the boat rises. Then again. So in effect, this from the sea level, it is to such a height that the ship is raised from sea level to a height of 26 meters above sea level. And similarly, this. So this is how, instead of falling into the trap of what the French predecessors done, this is the lock irrigation lock and lift system. So further, if I so this is how the system works. I'll just So here you can see this is the Atlantic Ocean. So we can see if the ship is here, then before opening of the locks, the water level will be made. It will the water will be brought here. It will be so that the lock can open and ship will proceed forward, and so on. The water level can be manipulated. Now another challenge was that this Gatun Lake was not earlier there. If we see this diagram, now I'll enlarge this diagram. If you see this diagram, here we come across this is the Gatun Dam. So this Gatun Dam, actually we have already discussed this is an elevated area, but to effect this lock and lift mechanism, a huge reservoir of water was required, obviously, to manipulate the lifting and locking mechanism, lifting of ships and enable the locking mechanism. So, for conducting that huge artificial reservoir of water, a dam needed to be constructed, and this was facilitated by a low-lying river valley known as Chagres. So, a Chagres river flowed through here, and it drained into the Caribbean Sea or the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so that process, the water of that river could be impounded or could be controlled by constructing a dam here. The river flow was in this from south to north towards from Pacific to Atlantic Ocean, from originating from land to Atlantic Ocean, and the dam was to be constructed. The only major excavation work was this narrow strip that had to be bored or excavated from the land. So river was flowing. It originated from the land and it drained into the Atlantic Ocean. So to connect that river passage to the Pacific Ocean, a culvert strip was excavated. Okay, so finally, in when the construction started in 1903, and finally after 9 years in 1913, it was finally inaugurated. This is President Woodrow Wilson. He sent a telegraph signal to blow the dike which controlled the final dike which controlled the water. And when it was blown, this entire the water flowed from this and it inundated this entire river valley, and this came to be known as the Gatun Lake or Gatun Reservoir. And this level, this water could be easily manipulated by the Gatun Dam, and this overlies or this can be superimposed with what we have studied. So this we you can see Gatun Lake, then there are this three locks on the side of the Atlantic Ocean, one, two, three, and two locks are there on the side of the Pacific Ocean. These are intermediate locks. Okay, so you can see how this works. Very interesting. Now, what happened in between? So it became a great source of US pride and all. It not only benefited the US trade but the relations also. But in the meantime, what led to the relinquishment of the US control? So what happened over the years, over the decades, over the functioning when it was under US control? Again, corruption, scandals, the cost effectiveness of the canal was not there. It was proving to be very costly to run the canal. There were again Panamanians also. They did not like the US imperialism, the imperialist control. Most of all, this Panama, the relation or the acquisition of the construction, the building, operating, and control of the Panamanian Canal, it started in 1903 when a treaty known as the Hay Bunau Varela Treaty was signed between the American and the Panamanian representative. But that Panamanian representative, that he had not taken prior consent from the Panamanian government. So that treaty, the validity of the treaty was also questioned. So after a lot of negotiations with the future presidents, finally there was a series of treaties which started in 1977 under at that time the president was Jimmy Carter. So if you have heard the news, President Trump has referred to him as a fool who sold the Panama Canal to the Panamanians at the cost of $1. $1, there is no proof of that, but he blames him for the failure. And here the Torrijos, there was this Torrijos Carter series of treaties which began to be signed, and finally in December 1999 the control was relinquished or control was completely transferred to the Panamanian government. Now this was a moment of great Panamanian pride. So since then it has become a symbol of national pride, self-esteem, of independence, of self of self-reliance. And this has Panama Canal has also become a chief source of the revenue for the government of Panama and Panama's overall economy. So now Trump is not only does not only want not only saying that the tariffs are exorbitant, which are charged through for the traversal or transit of the US trade and cargo, but he is also apprehensive of the influence of China in the region. So we'll come to that next. So finally, again, the geopolitical implication and context. So, first of all, he has this dream of let's make America great again. So, greater America. So, he wants to take back or establish control or whatever used to belong to US or what he feels belongs to the US. Okay, and then there is the Chinese influence as always. Okay, so we know that China is already under progressing forward for the Belt and Road Initiative, both the maritime and the road Silk Route. So in that recently what happened was in Peru. This is Peru, and near the capital of Peru, Lima, there is a Chanque port. It is not shown. This is the Chanque port, which has been built and is controlled by the Chinese authorities. And see where it is again a Latin American and a South American country, Peru. It is very near the Panama Canal. And also, Panama became the first Latin American country to join the Belt and Road Initiative in 2018. Okay, so you can see that China, not only in the Indian Ocean, not only in the Pacific Ocean, it is also trying to extend its influence. So the Chinese authorities, upon listening to Trump's accusations and Trump's threats, they are also not very pleased. So this is what is going on, and of course India is already at odds with the Belt and Road Initiative. So let's see how this pans out. But at the end I would just like to say that we should always take a lesson from not only history but geography also, in order to avoid our ancestors mistakes and to establish a safe and harmonious world. Till next time, Jai Hind.